2024 feels like it should have been a dry year, especially for the Nintendo fans out there. Like, this is the 7th year of the Switch's lifespan, and still, there were more exclusive games this year than the entire PS5's exclusive library. So although it wasn't as stacked as 2023, I think it's fair to say there were some absolute classics this year. But if you've seen my previous videos, you know I talk about the new games that came out this year, but also the games that were new to me this year. And considering how jam-packed last year was, there's still plenty of recent games that I missed out on. I played a total of 31 games, 11 of them coming out this year, which is probably the most new games I've played in a year altogether. So this time, I want to take you through my entire year, going over every single game I played. And to keep things interesting, I'll be handing out a variety of different awards, including the following. Bubba Is You is honestly one of the most confusing puzzle games I've played. This is a game that not only requires thoughtful thinking to plan out your moves, but also a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. I'm genuinely impressed with how many different problems this game has. It's not like other puzzle games where you can figure out one mechanic and reapply that knowledge, because this game will always challenge you to think of new solutions for what seemed impossible at first. I don't know, maybe I'm just dumb, but I got stuck a lot, and besides for maybe the first couple of puzzles, it would take a lot of trial and error to get through these puzzles. Personally, I'm not a huge puzzle game fan, usually because I can't figure out what seems obvious to other people, so like all puzzle games I've played, I hit a barrier I couldn't overcome, and eventually just put the game down. I respect this game for creating unique puzzles, but this shit just ain't for me. FPS games are probably the most oversaturated genre in gaming, but they have never really clicked for me. I exclusively play FPS games with friends, and I'm always the shittest player. And most of these games never hold my attention for too long, because playing online results in me getting absolutely clapped every time. The finals, however, is the only shooter I come back to. The amount of chaos and variety that occurs in a game makes it feel like your team can always come from behind and win. I had this whole segment about how the old game mode used to work, but because I only have footage of the new game mode, I won't talk about it, but all I'll say is bank it over quick cash. The way Quick Cash works is all three teams head towards one deposit. Once you get to it, it'll take a while for the money to print out. If you're able to grab it, you have to take it to a cash out point. And honestly, this part of the game isn't that crucial. It's still fun trying to rush it to the cash out because you're defenseless and you either have to chuck it away to a teammate or get killed running away. The main chunk of the game is cashing out. Once you get it to a cash out, all you have to do is make sure no one steals it when the timer runs out. But good freaking luck getting through all of this. Everyone is using all their abilities, people are sneaking up out of nowhere. When you think you're in the clear, you get ambushed by a whole team. But every now and again, you time it just right and are able to steal the money at the last second. These are the moments that make this game so fun, because it's not as formulaic as other shooters. There are so many different ways to win, and a big part of that comes from the destructible environments. This is the game's hook, but I think it's just another part of the game that adds to the variety that's already present. It incentivizes people to try out the different classes, as some characters can come charging through walls. At the start, my squad exclusively played as the big guy, because it was so much fun being able to break into roofs and walls to get to places quicker. You can also destroy the ground below the cash out points, which just adds to how flexible these games become. So I'd like to present the finals with the first award, that being the best out of comfort zone game. FPS games have never capitalized me like this, and this game feels much more replayable due to how all the classes and abilities interact with each other. So for me, I think it's very deserving of this award. Palworld was probably the biggest surprise of 2024. This game sold as well as the most recent Pokemon game, which is kinda crazy because this game's not even finished. But at the same time, maybe that's the formula. I don't know. For how broken and derivative this game is, it's a total shock that I became obsessed with it. What's even more baffling is I don't even like Pokemon, but I think the biggest draw here is the slave
worker system.
Capturing the pals opens the door to a lot of possibilities, because each pal has a different set of work skills to offer. This is things like watering, harvesting, building, mining, gathering, etc. And pals can have a combination of different skills. So it's interesting figuring out who works at the base and who spends eternity in the box. The further you venture out, the more pals you'll discover, and they'll be a lot harder to beat, which gives this game a great sense of progression. You can't just get one OP pal and then be able to get every other pal in the world, because capturing them in a way is tied to the main progression of the game. I really enjoyed the thrill of lowering an enemy's health to increase the odds of capturing the pal. Having an OP pal in battle opens you up to the risk of killing it before you can capture it, and for some pals, the chance of capture is too low with the regular pal sphere. This is where I think the game does a fantastic job of tying you back into the survival aspects of the game. You need to collect all the resources needed to make the better pal spheres, but you also need to level up your character by completing different objectives. And I could go on and on about how many different systems and resources are needed to expand your base, but it's just a classic survival game loop. The special thing about this game is the pals, whether that's automating the base, the engaging battle system, the unique skills you can unlock for some pals, or the thrill of capturing a boss when the odds are stacked against you. These are the moments that made Palworld special, and although I enjoyed the base building and resource gathering part of the game, I absolutely adored the battling and capturing aspect. I adored it so much, one day I spent 14 hours playing it from 9 PM to 11 in the morning. Would not recommend, but goddamn, this game just hooked me. And this is a good case for making games that are just fun. Like, I don't give a shit about the graphics or the jankiness if it results in something as addicting as this. Celeste 64 is a very short game with not much depth to it, but it is exactly the type of games I want more of. You can complete this in under 2 hours, but I love games where you can just turn off your brain and have a good time. Converting the tight controls of a 2D platformer to a 3D space has got to be a challenge. At first, I was struggling to land where I wanted to, but having the grab mechanic and being able to control the camera fluently allows you to feel more in control, especially if you play for a while. There's these little challenge rooms that were great additions. They're pretty difficult, but not in a way that makes them unfair. And any gimmicks that were introduced in the main level would often be expanded on in these challenge rooms. So although the main area is very small, there's some great mechanics introduced, and a lot of nice secrets sprinkled within. Collecting all the strawberries here was so much fun. I greatly appreciate the transition of one of my favorite 2D platformers into an overall great tiny package. This is a game that's been on my radar for ages. The core concept of swallowing as many things to grow out your hole is such an addicting concept. I had such a bad itch for this game. I played this shitty mobile game that was somewhat satisfying, but never really enough. So when I got Donut County, I thought it'd be an instant 10 out of 10 game. But then I found out this was a puzzle game. Now, I still think this is almost the perfect puzzle game for me, but the expectation was something more akin to Katamari Damacy. Instead of growing your hole to gargantuan sizes, you slowly grow it through each scene, as there's usually a deliberate process to beating each screen. But the environments on display lend themselves to some creative puzzles. Things like ingesting an oven, which then allows you to propel a hot air balloon, or flooding your hole with water to reveal more of the level. Inherently, the gameplay is really satisfying, but adding stage gimmicks allows for the idea to fully bloom. Ultimately, I wish it functioned more like Katamari Damacy, where the levels would be much more expansive, but I can't lie, this is a very charming indie game. So this year there's been a certain type of game I've sought after. Not in terms of genre or anything, but casual games that don't require too much of my focus. Just games I can play in the background whilst either watching YouTube, TV shows, or listening to music. And Toree 2 is perfect for this. Like, this is just a solid platformer. I don't have many thoughts about it because it's really just a few levels long with a couple of interesting mechanics here and there, but this game marks the start of my playing games in the background phase, as around this time I wasn't really motivated to get into any grand adventure type game. Lunistice is the perfect game for turning your brain off and just getting into a flow state. The movement is really simple, with you having a double jump and a spin, but the momentum and level design make up for the lack of deep movement options. The start of the game is your standard platforming venture, and I thought this would be very similar to Toree 2 because of this. But I have to say the level design here really ramps it up, getting very intense in the later levels. One of the main mechanics it introduces is rail grinding, which is very reminiscent of this game's clear inspiration. There's also sections that involve speed boosts, but on top of these mechanics is stage gimmicks. I think the game does a very good job of pacing these mechanics, so you never get too bored with anything. There's always new things being introduced, while simultaneously compounding on all the other mechanics you've learned. So by the end of the game, it's the perfect level of difficulty, as you go through a gauntlet of challenges. If you're a fan of fast-paced, simple platformers, this game is perfect. I can't say it was too memorable, as the game is really short and it's merely imitating a style of the past, but for what it sets out to do, it nails it. The N64 era of games has this weird personal effect on me. It's confusing because I didn't even grow up with an N64 or know anyone who played it, but something about the shitty 3D graphics really appealed to me. Or maybe it's the vibe and type of games that came out on the system. I think I'd contribute my love for these games down to how focused they had to be. Like you're working with a maximum of 64 megabytes, so a lot of the games had to cut corners and reduce the scale. Cavern of Dreams absolutely nails this vibe, but due to advancements in technology, the scope of the game is allowed to go beyond what the N64 could handle. And I think this is both a good thing in certain aspects, but also leads to some excess fat that bogs down the overall experience. The moveset this game offers is fantastic. Rolling around feels great, and you can couple it with a jump to really gain some distance. It's all pretty simple stuff like having a ground pound and a basic attack, but the moveset is used really well when interacting with the puzzles in this game. So I'd say a big reason I didn't click with this game that much is because of the heavy emphasis on puzzles. Some of these are really cool optional tasks to unlock secrets, but some of the things here had me stuck for ages, having to turn to a guide to figure it out. I liked exploring these levels when it was all the obvious stuff, but it feels pretty specific some of the things you have to do. And when this halts your progression, it feels like you're missing something so obvious. But the solutions are very cryptic. Like, how am I supposed to know to break this specific wall? You're supposed to look at the patterns on the wall and notice which way the fish are facing. Which I guess it's sort of fair, but it's pretty obtuse as well. There were a lot of points in the game where I was stuck after clearing out as much of the area as I could, and I didn't want to turn to a guide, but I was just going in circles for ages. By the time I got to the water stage, I just gave up on this game. To be fair, I suck at puzzle games, and this usually happens with every puzzle game I play. I'll get to a point where I've tried everything I can think of, I turn to a guide, and if the solution is something that seems reasonable, I might keep playing for a bit until I get stuck again. But most of the time, that's when I call it quits. I don't think this is a bad game, but I just had to put it here for me. A short hike is the type of experience I hope gets prioritized more. Personally, I didn't fall in love with the charm of this game, but I was still hooked by the exploration and sandbox elements of this game. And the fact that it didn't outstay its welcome allows me to appreciate it just that extra bit more. I honestly enjoyed the end of the game more. I like how getting to the top of the mountain really required me to get the most out of my wings. I think this game would have been easier if I got more feathers, but I love the freedom of doing it your own way over anything else. Except for maybe the volleyball. I played that until I won, and let's just say I'm still playing to this day. This is a short puzzle game I thought would be very relaxing, with pretty much an infinite amount of bite-sized puzzles. But I need to learn my lesson that puzzle games just aren't my thing. Like, my patience with puzzle games run out straight away, and that's exactly what happened here. This was the last Mario Kart game I needed to play to become a prestigious Mario Kart YouTuber, where all my opinions are respected. And it feels good to have played the entire series by now, because I feel like it's good to compare the tracks from different versions, or just compare the mechanics. Double Dash stands out as the most unique Mario Kart, and I gotta respect it for the huge switch ups it pulls. The fact that you have to keep track of 2 drivers was something I thought would be frustrating after a while, but really it's frustrating at the start, because grasping which character should get items while simultaneously trying to drive efficiently seems impossible. But when you get used to it, it's a great mechanic that makes racing feel way more strategic. I feel like there's a lot of potential for really interesting strategies depending on what item you hold on to, but I'm definitely not at that stage. I just be chucking Bowser shells all the time. I'm also a fan of the chaos in this game. I still had Baby Park though, just have to say. That's too much chaos, but the character specific items can add some crazy OP attacks. Like the Bowser shell is a guaranteed hit at narrow points in the track. I really like the inclusion of character specific items. I personally go for Bowser Shell and Chain Chomp, but it was fun to actually try out different characters and have it switch up the gameplay just a little bit. I'm going to talk about the courses in further detail in another video series, so for now I'll just say the course selection here is really good, and my favourite track is DK Mountain. Princess Peach Showtime is exactly what I expected the game to be. So can I really be upset that I spent my last game voucher on this instead of a better game? Not really, no, not really, but it still hurts. This game seems to be targeted to more casual gamers, because a lot of this game felt overly restrictive and tutorialized. There's some cool gimmicks added in near the end of stages, but the lack of challenge for a majority of the stage made it kinda boring. I gotta be honest and say, I put this game down really early, so I experienced like one world and then called it quits. But I was just not motivated to come back at all, and this was the start of my burnout from video games. I was also moving at this time, so I didn't have my PC set up for a lot of April, but for the entirety of April and May, there was no game I got hooked on, except for one really stupid one, but we'll get to that in a bit. This game was my first introduction to a roguelike game, and honestly, this game came at the wrong time. I played it for a little bit, but just got frustrated at the fact I had to restart my run, and I ditched the game after 2 days of playing it. Good news is I came back to get footage of it, and with a greater appreciation for roguelikes, as we'll get into later, I gotta say this one is really fun. Everything feels so quick and snappy. You rush around in this ball, boosting around the stage, bumping into enemies, but you can instantly come out of it and start shooting. The dynamic of having a fast-paced escape, but only being able to shoot when vulnerable, makes this a great risk and reward type of game. The gun variety is not the best, but to be fair, it could just be I haven't unlocked many guns. A lot of the guns I found were either too similar or not that useful, but I still think the tools you're given is more than enough to get through this game. This one reminds me of Enter the Gungeon due to how bite-sized it feels. A lot of your time is spent in the action due to the scope of the levels. Thankfully, this game has stayed on Game Pass all year, so if you have it, I would recommend trying this one out till you get to the boss. By that point, you'll know if you're addicted or not. This was the first game I played after I moved out, and it seemed like the perfect contrast to Princess Peach Showtime. A Souls-like about crabs. More importantly, a genuinely challenging game. I really liked the vibe of the game, up until I died on the first boss, then died like 20 more times, then just gave up on the game completely. Honestly, I feel bad that this game didn't connect with me, cause it seems like a hit, but I really had no patience with games at this point, and didn't play another game until the end of May. And this time round, I found the perfect contrast game. I'm not only surprised that this mobile game basically got me out of my video game rut, I'm also surprised it's good. This game looks like one of those fake ads where the actual game is just brain rot, but I got severely addicted to this game, and it's one of the only games I play on my phone. So what you're doing is directing your soldiers to conquer other towers. There's different types of towers that have different ways of attacking, and once you get one soldier into the building, you can send them out from there. You get up to 3 lines you can create, and the battle takes place wherever you can draw a straight line between. I feel like it's simple enough to understand. Connecting the towers at the start is pretty straightforward, but eventually you learn different ways to maximize your tower count. What towers to go for first, how to attack overpowered towers, the fact that you can hit their bridge to stop them from attacking. These are things only a no-life would know, so you're welcome. I'm honestly shocked this game has this many levels. I'm convinced it's been procedurally generated since level 500. It's kinda insane I've poured so much time into this that it's kinda a comfort game now. Most levels are too easy at this point, but when I first started playing it, it was really interesting to learn all the strategies. And there was quite a few times where I really struggled to win. I swear this isn't an ad, but Palworld guys, if you want to sponsor me, I'm down. I could sell your game for you. I wanted to briefly mention Minecraft because I've been playing this game on and off for about a decade, but after taking my regular 2-year break from the game, me and my friends had our 1-month period on the game, and I just wanted to show off my house as a little midway break because this video is so long, we need a break time I think. A little house tour here, welcome to my MTV crib as they like to say. And yeah, I think this time I went for a little bit of a nature-infested aesthetic. This is in the cherry blossom biome, a little valley we found. Here's my girl, Lois Griffin, my baby. As you can see, my wife. See, we got the nature-infused house, but then we come up here and I don't know, the best I could describe this is a room, I guess. You ever just build like a room with absolutely zero purpose, but vibes, you know? That's this room. And then we have our little, I guess, outdoor barbecue area. Also, once again, just vibes. I think it's a Hobbit Hole inspired area with the rooftops. I also didn't build this one, but I think I have to show it off because, you know, come on. Let's go up to the door. And we got a very small, cute cottage, I would say. Very nice. And it's connected to a furnace, a little basement, if you will. There's one more thing I need to show off. And that's the most important thing about this house. The balcony. Very innocent looking balcony, would you not say? You know, you're just chilling, but what you don't know is... boom. Secret base, 3 AM challenge, gone wrong, gone sexual. And here you have it. The blade of no straight. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but...
Not that there's anything wrong with that!
So there you have it. A little break time, but we should be getting back to some more epic games, would you not think, gamers? Hifi Rush was a game I never had any interest in, as it's a combination of 2 game genres I don't really like, that being rhythm games and beat 'em ups. But for some reason, the fusion of those 2 genres makes for a wildly addicting formula. And then on top of that, this game is just quality the whole way through, with so many amazing ideas to fully flesh out the 12-hour campaign. Staying on rhythm was something I struggled with the whole game, so I appreciated that most of the combos in the game are a combination of two different buttons, that being the light and heavy attack. This made remembering the combos fairly easy. Still, most of the time I would improvise and just use a combo that felt right, and by the end of the game, when you unlock more combos, you can improvise a lot. But later into the game, you definitely need to be familiar with all the different attacks. I think the pacing of this game is excellent in this regard. You get a bit of time to understand the rhythm and controls, and then you're throwing new mechanics, enemies, buddies, and different upgrades constantly. The different buddies you get seem like a one-time thing. I thought after unlocking the girl, it would serve as a great addition to all the other stuff dumped on you, but they not only introduce more buddies, but they allow you to switch between them on the fly, which makes the combat all the more satisfying. I played on hard difficulty, so for me, the combat became very chaotic, and with all the different enemies color-coded, it makes it easy to swap between the different abilities. And because there's a huge group of enemies, combat feels dynamic in that you choose which order to take them out in. I think things like the grapple and dodge make the chaos of too many enemies way more manageable. There's also a parry mechanic, which I rarely used at the start of the game, but it becomes essential later on, and it kind of gives you a reason to never lose. So anytime I did die, which was a lot, I knew it was my own fault. The combat was definitely the most impressive part of this game, but they didn't even put all their eggs in one basket. It blows my mind that pretty much every aspect of this game is given the right amount of care. The animations of the stages and how everything syncs to the music gives this game such a strong vibe. Stylized graphics are my favorite thing that's come out of the recent indie game boom, but to see a AA production with so much attention to detail and style is rare. This might not necessarily be a unique style, but what it imitates has never really been done in a video game before. So I respect the vision here, and I think it complements the gameplay perfectly. Now, there's one more thing about this game that I think elevates this to an all-time classic, and that's the bosses. The bosses implement everything that's good about the game, then ramp it up through multiple different phases. I died quite a bit on the first boss because its attacks are very fast. It requires you to dodge in different ways, yet still get close enough to deal damage. The second boss is a lot more specific, where you have to parry and dodge attacks in a pattern. This is also a mechanic that you need to master to finish a lot of the stronger enemies, and I wish I was better at this. I've lost so many fights because I always mess up the timing. There was one room specifically that took me 3 days to get past, and there were a couple of times I was on this screen to kill them, then I messed it up. It was so sad. The third boss was the one I really struggled on. There's a lot of attacks that require accurate parrying, and the chances to attack were not as open as the other bosses. There were also some times where it was difficult to understand what to do. Like, the amount of phases and different attacks lead to a lot of variety in this fight. So the challenge of overcoming this boss was one I appreciated greatly. I won't go over all the bosses, but I feel like it's pretty clear this is a standout game. Xbox losing this developer is one of the most baffling decisions I've seen, and it does not give me faith that Microsoft have any concrete strategy at the moment. Thankfully, the IP and studio got bought by Crafton, so I'd love to see an expansion of this game. Personally, I'd love if they did an electronic version of the game, but whatever they come up with, I'm sure it'll be amazing. And with that, I'd like to present Hifi Rush with the Best Game of the Year award. Although it didn't come out this year, this was my favorite game I played this year, and it's close to perfection in my eyes. So before, I mentioned how Go Mecha Ball did not connect with me at the right time. And I think roguelikes aren't for everyone because of the lack of in-game progress. But Risk of Rain 2 tickled my brain in just the right way. And as you'll see, this was the game that got me addicted to roguelikes. Risk of Rain 2 is a simple concept where the complexity comes from the items and character classes. The core gameplay has you killing hordes of enemies in order to get coins, to which then you can spend it on chests that give you random items. To move on to the next stage, you need to find a teleporter and activate it to fight the boss. Rinse and repeat 5 times, and then you can fight the final boss. The learning curve of this game is understanding the items. A lot of the terms used are normal for experienced gamers, but I had no idea what a lot of the items actually did, which to be fair isn't that much of an issue, as you don't choose your items, but there are some places where you can get specific items. Additionally, there are different colored items, with the orange items only allowing you to have one slot, so you have to choose wisely. Now, the amount of different effects these items have are kinda insane. There's healing items, movement items, additional skills, damage increasing items, unique effects, increased attack speed, chances to block, shields, and much more. I only mentioned common items, but there are way more OP items you can get from specific objectives or just good RNG. And when you stack a bunch of these, you feel so powerful. Like, this game doesn't hold back on making you feel powerful, which you'd think would make the game too easy, but you would be very mistaken. You cannot rest in this game, because all it takes is a couple of seconds and the onslaught of enemies will annihilate you if you're not constantly moving. I think this game does a great job with enemy variety. Even the basic enemies can get overwhelming if you don't pick them off. And the bosses, they are very threatening. I like that they cycle through different attacks, and sometimes something will seem impossible to overcome, but you realize that you have to tackle it a bit differently. The variety in bosses is lacking a bit, but for how different they are, I think it's okay. The character selection starts off very small, but after playing this game for over 120 hours, I have to say, I think these are some of the best characters in the game, especially with the Huntress. This might be the best character in my opinion. So this game does start small, but it nudges you to discover the crazy amount of secrets packed into this game. Each character can be unlocked by completing an objective, and a lot of these seem pretty obtuse when you read it. Like, what the fuck do you mean by free the survivor suspended in time? Or stabilize the cell in the void fields. The void fields is an area that is very well hidden, so I bet this is confusing for most players. But honestly, this was when I enjoyed the game the most, when I had to piece together these riddles and discover the many secrets in this game. One of my favorite missions was Power Plant. This one requires you to sacrifice your equipment slot for a battery that will insta-kill you if you fall below 50% health. So you have to make it through 4 stages and give it back to this dude. Then you unlock Rex, which is one of the trashiest characters ever. But the journey of this was really the highlight. I don't want to dive too much more into this game's secrets, because discovering them along the way is what sticks out most to me about this game. And when that rewarding part is gone and you've mastered the ins and outs of the game, there's still a fun, challenging game left over, but it's never exciting as when you're first discovering everything. I still have a few character-specific challenges I need to complete, but as a whole, this game served me well, and it just misses out on my favorite game of the year. Kinda crazy that I ended up playing these games back to back, and they ended up being the 2 best games of the year. But Risk of Rain 2 still deserves the best multiplayer game award. This game's still fun by yourself, but if you can, please play it with some friends. Penny's Big Breakaway is a game that feels really replayable, as grinding different stages for a faster time with this game's movement is a treat. The movement of dashing and then rolling away on your yo-yo feels great, because the stages help you keep your flow, and resultantly, gliding through these levels feels like a breeze. I feel like the level design is a bit too cluttered at times, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that there is like 40 different ways to go about a stage, so exploring can be a bit overwhelming, with a lot of paths not having any meaningful secrets on them. But I think there's so many paths to make speedrunning the levels more dynamic. I just haven't got round to that part, because I suck at this game. Last thing I want to talk about for this game though is the art direction. The colours and style used here is something wholly unique. I don't even know what to compare this to. I think the visual design of games can be a way to subtly persuade people that this is a special game, and resultantly, there's a lot of all-style, no-substance games, especially in the indie space. But this art style complements the level design and whimsical feel of the game. So therefore, I award this game with the Best Vibes award. It's a shame you're breezing through this, because appreciating the backgrounds and color palette here is just so beautiful. As a Nintendo fan and indie game appreciator, graphics have never been a huge priority for me. I mean, Palworld was one of my favorite games of the year, and it kinda looks like shit. And the games I tend to gravitate towards have more stylized graphics. but with Rift Apart, I was so impressed with how it felt. Graphically, this game is flawless, but what really elevates this is the design of the world. Games can have high fidelity and all these impressive buzzwords, but if your worlds are lacking detail or originality, it's really just all for nothing. Rift Apart excels in the little details and feels like a real world because of this. Like, I'm not impressed that this single door has 50,000 megapixels. I'm impressed the backgrounds of these worlds are moving and it all connects to the world I'm exploring. I'm impressed when you can walk into a portal and you're just instantly taken there. I'm impressed when you can see the emotion that needs to be displayed in a certain scene. These are all things that, in my opinion, enhance the experience. But looks alone cannot carry a game, and thankfully the combat in this game absolutely carries it. The guns you're given at the start of the game are pretty essential, and they feel very satisfying to use. The Executor was my most used gun, and it's essentially a shotgun, but the way it looks and the weight it has behind it make it one of the best weapons in the game, especially for crowd control. Then you have something like the Ricochet, which is really good for taking down single enemies. Once you gather a large collection of guns, combat feels so diverse, because you will run out of ammo pretty quickly, so you constantly have to switch between these guns. And you figure out how certain enemies are weaker to different guns. You learn certain guns are more automatic, so you can focus on dodging attacks. Now, whilst all these guns aren't entirely useful, you're incentivized to find out what is useful through the lack of ammo, and this made combat encounters always thrilling, especially when you consider how smooth this game feels. Dodging by just jumping is something that is inherently easy to do, and you're also able to easily dodge. If you're playing on controller like me, you have access to press all these buttons at the same time, so really you're able to dodge and attack at the same time effortlessly. The exploration in this game was something I didn't expect to be good, but there's one planet in this game that opens up and gives you multiple objectives, and gliding along using the jump ramps makes getting between them very easy. Although it was only really one planet that did this, the game is paced really well in that you're excited by everything else happening. You don't even crave more of these planets. Just when you've done so much on-ground combat, you're introduced to a boss battle that reels you back in, which made this game fly by. I actually went back and played New Game Plus for this, because with the amazing pacing, I craved more of the combat, even though I'd done so much of it. I wanted to explore all the different upgrades I got and tackle this game on a harder difficulty. I can't say many games have done that for me, but this game was so satisfying to play, it made it easy to come back. The one gripe I have with this game are these annoying puzzle sections, but the fact you're allowed to skip them kinda solves my one problem. I don't know why they included it if you can just skip it, but no complaints from me. Roboquest continued my exploration of the roguelike genre, and whilst I haven't sunk as many hours into it as Risk of Rain 2, whilst getting footage for all the games I forgot to record, I kept delaying playing the other games, because once you learn the weapons and abilities of this game, you'll be stuck thinking about it all the time. The variety of guns you can unlock in a single run makes each run feel unique. I got attached to the guns I acquired at the start of the run, and it's easy to when it feels like you're just breezing through the game. But I think constantly switching to new guns and having some variety between them helps you out in the later game. For example, I got this long range grenade thrower, and that was really OP at the start of the run. And I coupled this with a close range flamethrower, and this made me feel OP using the strategy I used all game. But later into the run, the enemies didn't give me as much space, and a lot of them were in the air, so the grenade thrower wasn't as powerful, and the flamethrower got me too close to danger. The enemy variety always keeps you on your toes, and it sorta reminds me of Hifi Rush, in that you get to choose which enemies to take down in what order. It starts off pretty simple with these little bots, but eventually things are hacking you, or dashing into you from the sky, or protecting every enemy with a shield, and when you throw all these things together, rooms become chaotic, and you need to take out some of the OP enemies while still being mindful of everything around you. And that's where I think the level design complements this chaos. The level design almost feels like a parkour arena. There's different paths you can follow and lots of areas to take cover. You can ambush enemies by jumping through small gaps. Then you have things like the rails, where you're more exposed, but the momentum allows you to avoid attacks and deal with enemies up close and personal. You can even traverse the boundaries of stages. I wish I mentioned this in my Out of Bounds video because this is something that feels forbidden, like you accidentally found a way to get to the top of the stage. It's funny that you can still attack enemies from up here, but it's never really what I choose to do. Instead, it's more useful to find collectibles. I feel like the best roguelikes have secrets hidden under the surface. Risk of Rain 2 does this really well, but the different types of challenge rooms and secret paths have made me so addicted to this one. It's probably recency bias as this is the only game I've actively been playing in December, but I'm in that stage of the game where I'm halfway through unlocking everything, and I know a lot of good weapons and items, but I haven't discovered them all. With the amount of variety I've already experienced, I hope there's more to discover, so I can eventually beat this game, but what I've been served so far is more than enough. You may have noticed this game was on the worst side of the thumbnail, but I don't hate this game. To be honest, I was struggling to fill the thumbnail with enough bad games, because I didn't really play that many actual bad games this year. This game is bad in the same sense that Palworld is. Like, clearly this wasn't given as much effort and polish as other indie games. But that's not the point. A lot of the fun of this game comes from how janky the physics are. If this wasn't a multiplayer game, it would be decent at best. But with friends, this is incredibly entertaining. You really have to be in sync to make a lot of these jumps. But when you're talking through Discord, you're gonna be a bit out of sync, which leads to some laugh out loud moments. The level design is honestly pretty engaging, but what makes it engaging is how stupid some of these obstacles are. When the car came out, the physics were absolutely arse, but it makes for an interesting twist on everything else we were doing. I feel like the chain mechanic could have been developed on more, like when someone falls off, you can maybe save them by pulling them up, but you can't really use physics in your favor. It'd be cool if you could swing them around to help you out, or skip some sections. But in the end, it's kind of funny when one person fucks up so bad that everyone dies. Although it's clearly a low effort game, these are the type of multiplayer games I love to play. Neon White is a game that oozes style. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not so much. But I ignore the story in most games, so when we're talking core gameplay, this one's a banger. The main gimmick of this game is that for every gun card you're given, it can be used as either a gun or an alternative movement option. What makes this interesting is how shooting the gun doesn't instantly use it up, whereas using it for the new movement option does. And therein lies the strategy of this game. You have to kill every enemy in a level to complete it, but the way this game is designed allows for there to be multiple ways of solving it. And for me personally, I had to get the Diamond Award for mastering a level, but this is when you truly start to appreciate the game. Optimizing these levels is thrilling, and honestly the best part is trying to come up with a new strategy that's completely different to the intended path. My favorite moments were when I completed a level thinking it was pretty good, to then see the diamond time is like 7 seconds better than what I got. So you just know there's some out of the box solution that you're missing. There's not too many weapons, but in this case, I think that's a good thing. Levels can sometimes be pretty overwhelming, and when they get too long, it can be really time consuming trying to get that perfect run. The bosses are on the verge of being too long, but for the final challenge of a world, I think it's acceptable. My favorite weapon was definitely the SMG that allows you to rocket jump. There's some really creative uses for this, and it's inherently satisfying to get the perfect launch. But the pistol and rifle are both very useful, and coupling these together allows you to pull off many skips. I haven't finished this game yet because I keep getting stuck grinding at a level for close to half an hour. I think I'll come back to this one next year because you really have to commit to it if you want to get those diamond times. Slay the Spire was a game I thought I'd have no interest in. Deck builders and turn-based RPGs are some of the most boring games in my opinion. But if there's anything I've learned, it's that if you put roguelike elements into a game, I'll be there. This game has become my comfort game due to how easy it is to play this in the background. I can chuck on a movie and have this on my second monitor, then never have to pause because the pacing is completely reliant on my moves. Thankfully, the amount of strategy and variety here allows each run to feel satisfying. Actually beating this game has the perfect combination of luck and strategy, especially considering you can choose what challenges you face. If you prefer upgrading your cards, you can choose to pass by as many campfires as possible. If you want rare items, you can challenge elite bosses. Or if you're like me, you'll go to as many random events as possible to maybe get something really unique. I think the variety in items and cards makes this game feel different each time you play it. I struggled for ages to learn this game because it does have a lot of RPG terms that I wasn't used to, but after learning them, you can see the value in having so many different effects. Because with the over 170 different items you can get, there's always a way to expose enemies' weaknesses. I haven't even mentioned the potions in this game. They are essentially more modifiers that you get to use one time. Then there's the different characters which have their own cards and abilities. Then there's the daily challenges that add more modifiers on top of everything else. It's shocking how many different effects can switch up a game. I guess when the gameplay is pretty simple, you get to focus on all the different ways to spice it up. So playing this game is simple, but mastering it is very difficult. And even if you're not a fan of RPGs or turn-based RPGs, I think the roguelike elements make this one of my favorite games of all time. And I think it is deserving of best indie game as well. Didn't come out this year, but this game just captivated me so much, and it's one of my favorite games to replay nowadays. Xbox Game Pass has been my favorite way of discovering new games. There's a lot of big franchises here, but honestly, the amount of indie gems on this service is kinda insane. So every now and again, I'll try something out I usually wouldn't unless I had this service at all times. Dungeons of Hinterberg is an interesting blend of many game genres. The main focus is puzzle solving in different dungeons. Surprisingly, I really liked this aspect of the game. The puzzles were still difficult, but due to how limited the moveset is, it didn't take too long to figure it out. But the limited moveset also leaves this game feeling kinda boring a lot of the time. The platforming especially is flat. It's basically the same climbing mechanics that everyone hates. You just follow the white lines and press a button. Each region you travel to will give you 2 different power-ups, and this doesn't solve how stiff everything feels, but at least it makes combat more engaging. This was my favorite part of the game, but I wouldn't say this is anything too impressive. Once again, everything feels kinda sluggish, and there's no combos or anything to spice up the combat, except for the 2 abilities you're given. But you can't spam these. Most of combat is dodging and either doing a light or heavy attack, which isn't bad, just not memorable at all. Now, the last part of this game was something I barely wanted to interact with. That's because this game is structured like Persona, where it has the social sim aspects and the calendar system. To get me interested in a story, most of the time I either want it to be really simple or really high concept. But this was so boring to me, and none of the dialogue options actually had meaningful outcomes. So I was skipping over this as much as possible. Honestly, I don't really know what to think of this game. On one hand, it feels pretty plain, especially with how every mechanic is something I've seen done better in another game. But then again, a lot of this game's inspirations come from genres I'm not too fond of. Surprisingly, I played this game for 14 hours. So I obviously liked it enough to keep playing, but this is a game I've pretty much forgot about already. If you've seen my previous best games of the year videos, you'll know this has been one of my most anticipated games. The core idea of swapping between 2D and 3D is so unique, and it was giving off the same vibes as games like It Takes Two and Tinykin. I think the scope of this game isn't as big as I'd envisioned, as I kinda hoped you'd explore the whole house, but I greatly appreciate the more focused experience, as there's a much heavier emphasis on navigating the single storybook. I think for how simple the combat and platforming is, it's made up by the creative level design and puzzle elements of this game. A lot of the puzzles require you to flip between pages. This was a really cool idea, and it made finding secrets more interesting. The problem is that a lot of these environments you explore aren't that big, as they have to fit on the storybook, so the secrets weren't the main focus. In the end, this is a really linear game. Despite technically going back and forth, there's one solution for everything, and in some areas, I didn't like the solutions. I like when you go back in the book after changing things, or when you could affect the book from the outside, but a lot of the time there are these specific spots you have to go near to make a green portal appear. I feel like this wasn't communicated properly, and it felt frustrating when you're just wandering around looking for a random portal to appear. But when you're just focusing on the word puzzles or the manipulation of the storybook, that's when the game shines the most. I know the game's linear and there's only one solution to these puzzles, but I kinda liked experimenting with all the different word combinations. I think all the stuff in the book was pretty fun, but it didn't hold a candle to the 3D levels. Every now and again you need to venture off into the real world, and this happens a couple of times. Thankfully the desk changes, and so do the objectives and mechanics. This is what I wish the game was more focused on. Jumping between 3D spaces and drawings is so creative, and there's a lot of cool obstacles and even some minigames. Exploring in these areas was so rewarding, and I wish there was more of this. I can imagine how cool it would have been if it was set in a school, where you have a lot of drawings being able to connect parts of the level and multiple different art styles. But for what this game did, it did a fantastic job. This one just misses out on best vibes, but this is a hella charming game. The 2D or 2.5D Zelda games have never made a huge impact on me. I've played all the classics like Link's Awakening, A Link to the Past, even games like Tunic that are inspired by the Zelda franchise, but they've never clicked with me, until now. Who knew a hybrid with my favorite game would create another amazing experience? The sandbox elements of this game has kept me interested, and I think this semi-open world design is a great in-between of the two styles. I know a lot of people want linear Zelda, but for me, this franchise has become something so special due to the player freedom it offers. The echoes are kinda broken, at least the movement ones. Like placing beds allows you to skip heaps of sections, and in some cases it does trivialize whatever puzzle they're setting up, but I don't care. I love breaking games, and in this game specifically, I think the somewhat linear structure still allows for a lot of unique puzzles with specific solutions. The dungeons have kept me engaged because of this, because they require you to have built up knowledge of what all the echoes do. The open world still has variety of missions or secrets that require some critical thinking. Combat is probably the weirdest thing about this game. Don't get me wrong, I fuck with it heavy, but being a spectator in fights feels weird. So far, I haven't found one echo that is superior. For most scenarios, you have to change up your strategy, and I really love this aspect of the game. I feel like your echo is a bit weaker than the same enemy, so you actually have to find things that contrast to the enemies. This is especially cool with the bosses, and it takes some trial and error to find out what works best. And this has been a constant for my entire playthrough. Testing out different echoes is really fun, because when you think one is inferior, there could be another situation where they're really useful. There's also the possibility of using them as a movement option instead. I mainly use one thing for traversal, but the opportunity to use others have appeared. So far, I'm halfway through the game, and the variety of quests and exploration has left me more than satisfied. The biggest gripe I have with this game is the goddamn menus. This is something that's carried over from Tears of the Kingdom, and it uses the same sorting method that makes picking new echoes really difficult. Like, if I barely use something, none of the categories allow me to quickly get to it. I don't know a simple solution for this, but I think creating your own groups and having menus drop down when hovering over it would allow you to be more in control. This is a tiny gripe because I can overlook UI issues if the actual game is still fun. It's so fun and innovative. I have to give it the best game of 2024 award. For the longest time, I was convinced Palworld would take this one, and whilst this game hasn't hooked me as much as that one, I think the gameplay here is wholly unique, and it has cemented my faith in whatever new ideas the Zelda team will come up with. This is also why I don't want the Zelda series to go back to the linear structure. I want to see what else they can do to encourage player expression. I love games where the conversation is about how different our experiences were, and games like these are what we need more of nowadays. This game feels like it was given a year of development time, because it is the most nothing game with Garfield slapped onto it for no reason. And I guess it's pretty obvious when you look at it. A theme you'll feel whilst playing this game is that everything feels automatic. Like, you're going around this huge circle, you can't strategize where you're going to land, and when you do have some choice, you can't even view the board. Even if you could see where you're going to land, nothing gives you any sort of meaningful benefit. I'd say this game is closer to Mario Party 9, as you're not purchasing stars, or lasagnas in this case. You earn them from winning minigames. There's also one item that lets you gain as many lasagnas as you roll. It's super OP and doesn't make sense why it's in this game, because the rest of the items have like no purpose. They allow you to move more around the board, which barely benefits you. You get 2 lasagnas from passing go, which barely has an impact on the end result, because getting around this board takes forever, even with all the items. So the board gameplay feels absolutely mindless, and when you couple that with how slow everything is, it's so boring. Every single turn the game will ask you to confirm if you're using an item or not, but it does this for every player. I literally can't do anything but press no, but it still requires me to do this for everyone's turn, and moving around can be so much faster. Each turn takes forever. Now, the board gameplay is absolutely mindless and slow, but the minigames are usually the saving grace in these shovelware games. But not here. They decided to double down on making this one of the most uninspired games ever made. If you want to learn the controls for every minigame, it goes along the lines of move and press A. Or in this case, move, press A, and then watch the game not work. The minigames will either be just as mindless as the board gameplay, or so incredibly easy to win. And most of the boring games always go on for way too long. This game is miserable, and unlike Garfield Kart, which is a funny bad game, this is a depressing bad game. So I give this the dishonorable award of worst game of the year. Mario Party has created so many core gaming experiences for me. I've made a lot of different videos about this series, and Mario Party 9 was the second series I had on my channel. Also, playing Mario Party in lockdown resulted in some interesting moments. No, Daisy, I don't think it's right. I think it's wrong. I think it's freaking wrong that you even suggested that it was right. What am I talking about at this point? But the thing I've always valued most about the Mario Party series are the couch co-op moments. I haven't played this game much by myself, so I only have single player footage, but I can say this is one of the best multiplayer games of all time. The switch up of board gameplay in Mario Party 9 was interesting. As you can tell, I'm a Mario Party 9 fan, but I definitely prefer the classic formula, and think this innovation they went for was not the right direction for the series. So just bringing back the classic formula with boards that are actually big enough was a free win for Nintendo. I think these boards aren't the best compared to the older games, but the variety present makes this a great selection of boards. Goomba Lagoon is my favourite, as it requires a lot of strategy and forward thinking. I think getting stuck on an island is a valid reason not to like this board, but I think it's funny. Me and my mate got stuck on this island together and kept landing on the same space. I think we dueled like 5 times because of this, with each bet increasing by 1 coin. Rainbow Galleria is another highlight. It's huge, with many points that allow you to stay in control and pick where you go. The different shops and minigames on the side make every corner eventful. I haven't unlocked the other boards, but I know Western Land will be fun in this game style. Speaking of that, the items and events of each board strike a great balance between RNG and strategy. New additions such as the Shop Hop Box and Pipe allow for some great risk and reward plays. And I think the only item that shouldn't be here is the Chomp Call, because it can be way too OP and ruin a lot of games. Having board specific items is a good idea, and shows that these boards can have a lot of manipulation of luck to them. When I saw that allies were returning, I was a bit worried, because these guys broke Super Mario Party, but every change they've made makes them way more engaging. First up, you have a unique minigame for each one, and I like that everyone participates, but getting to the ally gives you a tiny advantage. These minigames have been really cool to discover and see what games they come up with for each character. I love how they have Waluigi Pinball, and that game is still fun. Once you win, you get their ability, and another cool thing is that they disappear after 3 turns. So some of the more OP allies won't break the entire game. Additionally, they can get stolen from you, so I feel like this system is completely fair. For one turn, I was able to get 4 stars because I had Peach, who allowed me to get 2 stars for 20 coins. Then I had enough money left to steal 2 stars. Moments like these are why I love Mario Party so much. You never know when your luck can turn around. But the perfect way to contrast this is with the minigames. They were cooking with these ones, and the addition of motion controls is one I welcome, because a lot of these ones actually needed to be motion controls, so you get a unique experience with them. The variety here allows for skill, strategy, and luck. My favourite minigame for each category is Sandwiched, Unfriendly Flying Object, and Hot Cross Blocks. I haven't got around to any of the additional modes yet, but I've been playing with friends a lot, and this is where I've had the most fun. This is a worthy entry in the franchise after so much experimentation. Hopefully the next entry can add some elements from older games, because it makes this one close to the ultimate Mario Party. I'm gonna be honest straight up, I played this game because I needed more games on the bad side of the thumbnail. And I'll admit, even though this is a bad game, it's kinda stupid fun. Like, look at me stacking these burgers. Look at how much fun I'm having. But I haven't played this game for long enough to actually judge it, but for what I've seen, this is a sandbox game where messing around is the core gameplay. If you had any sort of connection to SpongeBob, and you were into stupid games, this could be kind of fun. It reminds me of games like Totally Reliable Delivery Service, but the fun of that game is the multiplayer. So without it, I got bored pretty quickly. A lot of the content I like watching on YouTube nowadays are dev videos. Seeing people with their own sense of comedy and ideas infused into a tangible product is so interesting. Muck is a stupid game where everything is kinda a joke, but at the same time, it's kinda really fun. It's a roguelike survival game with terrible combat and really basic graphics, but it combines the 2 most addicting game genres into something that in concept alone is a hit. You have to collect resources like wood and ores, and this allows you to craft pickaxes, to which then you mine stronger ores, and then you just keep trying to upgrade everything. You can make food which you'll be devouring constantly because of how draining everything is. You can make bow and arrows to attack from a distance, you can make swords to fight quicker. Everything you do is done to give you a slight hope that you won't just die on the first boss. It's all simple stuff, but what makes this game so addicting is the fact you're never given enough time to get all the resources you want. It feels like each day ends just before you have the resources you need, and resultantly, you always have something to do, but you have to prioritize what resources you gather. I've played this game for long enough now, I know the main strategy is to buy all your resources, but due to how difficult this game is, it's still fun to go through the same strategy. The items also add that extra bit of variety that can sometimes make or break a run. You can get some OP items and breeze through the first couple of days, but for me, the run will always end on the 8th day. The enemy variety is honestly kinda crazy. By themselves, the small goobers aren't too bad, but if you don't pick them off, you're left with a horde of enemies that all attack at different times. As you can see in the footage, the main strategy for combat is pretty mindless, but I'm telling you, it's so easy to die. When you think you've killed everything, the goddamn stone goobers come out of nowhere and clean you up. For such a simple concept, this game has caused so much laughter with friends, and still trying to find new strategies to not die straight away was genuinely engaging. I'm yet to beat this game, so I still play this every now and again, hoping everything will align. And it's a free Steam game that pretty much any computer could handle, so it's a great one to play with friends. I didn't play any games in December because I needed to get this video out by 2024, and 31 games is already so much more than any video I've ever made. But ending the year with Balatro left me completely satisfied, as I got to check out one of the biggest surprise hits of 2024. I got this on mobile, and it's fair to say this is the easiest way to increase your screen time. Card games are simple fun in my eyes, and just the concept of learning the different poker hands is decently entertaining. But then you have the scoring system. Cards will earn you blue chips, and the jokers, which are the big modifiers, will mostly earn you the red chips. You multiply the points and are left with the total chips. The jokers are the main modifiers, and depending on what hand you usually play or what strategies you value, your ideal game will be completely different to mine. I like jokers that compound if you do certain tasks, or the ones that focus on the hand 2 pairs. What makes this game so addicting is the amount of different modifiers. There's the jokers, the tarot cards, the planet cards, the spectral cards, the different abilities to add to regular cards, the badges that make the final levels harder, the different decks. There's so many factors that change a run, and slowly you will learn what strategies work for you. But the difficulty strikes a great balance between luck and strategy, which makes jumping back into a new run so much fun. This was easily the most games I've played in a year, and I gotta attribute that to the variety I sought out. Even though a lot of these games didn't connect with me, it led to me discovering a lot of new game genres that I never knew I'd like. The roguelike genre was something I knew about for a while, but never enjoyed due to losing all your progress. But this year, it was my favorite type of game, and as you'll soon see, most of my favorite games this year were roguelikes. I'm gonna rank all the games I played this year, starting off with the worst category. Contrary to the thumbnail, there weren't actually that many bad games. Most of the games I put there were actually in the neutral category, so we only have 2 games that actually belong here. This is where a lot of the games I didn't play that much went. There's also some that I played a lot, but ultimately nothing stood out about it. These are the games that I enjoyed this year. Even though I enjoyed some elements of the neutral games, for these games, I think the whole package is a good time. But these games aren't perfect, as that's impossible. However, there is still one tier above this. So each year I've done this, I've had a very small selection of best games. 2 from 2021, 1 from 2022, and 3 from 2023. These are the games that will stick with me forever, and are definitely in the question for my favorite video game. This year I have 3 games that enter that legendary status. 2024 was a great year for both games I was excited for, but also a lot of hidden gems I never knew I'd discover. Like is tradition, I'm gonna go over the games I'm excited for in 2025, as well as some games I didn't get to play this year but really want to next year. On the Nintendo side of things, there's not much coming out. We don't know what's gonna launch with the next system, but I bet we'll get something exciting that we just don't know about at the moment. There's Metroid Prime 4, which might be something I check out, but for what I've played, Metroidvanias aren't my thing. So I guess we can cross off Silksong from my most anticipated games, if it even does come out in 2025. GTA 6 is something everyone is excited for, me included obviously. I won't buy a PS5 or Xbox for this, but if it comes to PC, I'll check it out then. So the Game Awards showed off some more trailers I was interested in, and although I finished the script ages ago, I decided to add these in last second. Split Fiction is now my most anticipated game. This comes from Hazelight Studios, the developers behind It Takes Two, and the concept alone is so creative. And I know if any studio could get the most out of this premise, it's gonna be Hazelight. Really, they're the only studio devoted to amazing co-op adventure games. And with all the experience they've had with It Takes Two, I know this will deliver. And we only have 2 months to wait. I love the reveal of this so much. Slay the Spire 2 is a game where I'm not sure why there's a sequel. For everything they showed off, I don't see why they couldn't have done DLC, as everything looks the same but more. Either way, I'm excited to hear more and see what they can do to improve on the fantastic foundation of the original. The last game I'm excited for is Elden Ring Night Rain. I still haven't played the original, so I'm not entirely sure if it'll be the right game for me, but the idea of playing Elden Ring in multiplayer is a really interesting concept, and I think it could help me stay more committed to the game if I had a friend to help out. This year I enjoyed playing a few of the action adventure games on hard difficulty, and I see the value in mastering a difficult game. But at the same time, I got really frustrated at another Crab's Treasure, so it's hard to say what I'll feel. Those are mostly the games I'm aware of that are coming out in 2025, but a majority of games I'm still looking forward to play came out this year. Those include Animal Well, Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, Helldivers 2, and Astrobot. Unless Astrobot gets ported, I doubt I'll ever play it. As for the other games, there's a good chance I'll pick them up when they're on special. I just want to say thank you for everyone for supporting me this year. The switch to more scripted content is something I wanted to do for a bit, and now that I've had this experience, it has me hopeful for the future. There's so many ideas I still have. I like coming up with things that no one else has made before. The support lets me know I'm doing something right, I think. I don't know. So for everyone who liked, commented, or subscribed this year, I hope to see you next year, and thank you for making 2024 a good one.